Good morning and welcome to Presence of Light with Charlie Riverman Bergeron, and I thank you. I'm going to wait a few moments to see if people arrive and if I truly am live or not. It's always interesting as technology and I sometimes have some interesting disagreements. And so I'm not seeing anybody appearing at this point. It says I'm live. There's a beautiful little heart. Thank you very much. Somebody, Terry Kelly, thank you. Leonie has joined. Thank you, Leonie. Thank you for the confirmation that I do exist here. I get a little sketchy after doing a show and having it disappear or not being heard. So anyway, good morning and welcome you. I welcome you all to my heart space, which is the presence of light. This morning's chat will be, as the title says, 99999. Reflection and Introspection. And the 99999 came from my odometer reading on Wednesday as I was bringing my car to be serviced. And as a result of that, the number 9 started really rolling through and bringing me to a deeper understanding of what I have been. Thank you, Terry. Yes, great. Thank you. A greater understanding of what I've been going through, not only in the past week, but the past several weeks of pulling back from social media, from trying to research what I've been doing over the past 27 years since my death experience, and how I feel all of that is coming to somewhat of an end, but not really an end. It's coming to a new place, a new understanding, perhaps a new beginning. And the 9s read that, they reflect that. The interesting thing for me has always been watching numbers. Since numerology was one of the first things that I was drawn to do when I came back to try to understand some of the energies that I was going through. And though I don't retain that in my mind, I always look up numbers, and when I see numbers, I pay attention to them because they're part of what I called in the beginning synchronized communication. And the synchronized communication I talk about is basically, in the beginning, was with all I understood as angels, and then became guides and other beings, elementals, energy forms, life forms that we don't even begin to understand from a third dimensional human part of ourselves. And we have to tap into what I express as our multidimensionality. And that's not what the show is about today. It's about my reflecting on that and pulling away from my attachment to things and places and people that I have been in communication with over the past 27 years. As we all know, many people are leaving this plane of existence right now. And a sad note was this morning when I woke up and Anthony Bourdain had committed suicide. And I don't watch TV, my beloved does, but I hear it. It's always an undercurrent that I can tap into. The sad thing that I noticed this morning was how this year there have been more suicides than homicides. And I said, wow, that really hit me hit me deeply. And I think all of us, many of you here who join me on this show, have loved ones who have crossed over recently, or whether they be children or brothers or family members or friends. And we all know what that emptiness feels like. And it doesn't leave us many times with an understanding of what's happening. And that's, again, not what this show is about, but I want to bring it into the field of resonance today as part of why each of us and are going through some sort of deep reflection and a deeper introspection, looking into ourselves and trying to validate who we are, what we're here to do, why things are happening around us in the manner they are, and trying to find our unique place. First thing I want to say is your real place is your heart. And when we live from our hearts, we begin to open the gateways to a better understanding of that which is outside of us. So the number 9 really it represents the last number, the final number, finality, a limit, an end, a goal. Okay, and there's many mathematical philosophers call it the finishing post, and it's completion. It's also a very beautiful alchemical number in the fact that it holds 3 trinities, 333, and it's a divine triad of who we truly are. And when I first came back from my death, I was guided to work with triads, and they've expanded in my grid work and my earth work and into tetrahedrons. And so it's interesting that the number 9 is now appearing for me as completion. What did I complete? And why do I not feel like I have completed something? So that brings me into, and brings, when we start to question what we do, is we start to look out in the world and reflect. We look at things we look for the mirrors, and that's our reflection. We reflect within us, and the mirror shows us who we are, and hopefully in that process we get to see ourselves in each other. And again, many of us are seeing the worst part of ourselves in each other. And that's very discomforting. And it can lead to depression, and it can lead to somewhat of a self-analysis that we're not worthy or that we're failures. And so this is how it looped around this morning as I looked at people leaving the world due to what most people call depressive disorders. Interestingly, the second word of introspection is philosophically, it's of the mind. It means learning about one's own currently ongoing or recently past mental states. So while reflection is more of a mirror image, it's actually a physics dynamic. It's a dynamic of physics. We also have this emotional. So we're talking about physics and energy, and we don't think of that in those 2 words because we've been trained to think of them from just our human behavior and from our human interaction. But on a deeper level, reflection and introspection is really an alchemical process. It's really the dynamics of magic, that you can't perform magic. And many magicians are quite well aware of reflection and introspection. So we have to become the magicians of ourselves. We're magically creating from within. The question is always, where is that within? So where is within, and how do we reflect on what we're doing out there and who we are in here? Is that some kind of psychosis? Is that a reality? What is that? Well, over the years, my emotional energy has moved through many waves and cycles. And as I tend to pull away in some sort of self-reflection and introspection, I always withdraw into what I call my heart space. And recently, in the past few years, that has deepened and opened. As many, otherwise I wouldn't even be here speaking to you. And I sense that there's now another stepping out again, or as I step within, so also I step without. And I find that's the message that I have for each and every one of you who are listening, and for you to think about is, where are you showing up in the world, and how are you showing up? And not to make it a point of judgment, but just a point of observation for each of us to become the observer. If the nines are representing an ending of some part of our human evolution that no longer serves us, that the doors have been closed, the pathways have been plowed up, and now they're replanted as green pasture, so we can't walk that path anymore. Where do we go from here? And how do we know where we are and what we are? The answer to that is never outside of us, because outside of us is always a reflection. And what we perceive we are, we cast that out into the mirror, and then we see it back, and we either like it or we don't like it. We judge it. We go into judgment over it. The period for us as humans is to end that period of judgment. And this is the message that I receive, is that the judgment has been part of a process where humanity needed that on some level in order to make it aware of it being something far more powerful than what it told itself thousands of years ago, and what was perpetually told to them as they created civilizations and power structures and the life we live in. And we realize that this life we live in today is filled with much trauma and much drama. And it's I know when I say the word illusion, it upsets people. But truly, it is an illusion that we are living through, because we are eternal beings. And the message for me now is, how do we now begin to live our lives here as eternal beings and bring that energy in? And how do we start to relate that? So there are many people in the world right now who are expressing a lot of concepts that are not just fantasy. They are reality. They're working with energy. They're working with what they call galactic beings. They work with spirit. They work with divine guidance. I speak a lot about multidimensionality, that I work in I'm a multidimensional being, and so are you. And that when we open our conscious awareness, we can tap into the frequencies of those collective consciousnesses and work with them and receive information and empower ourselves to guide us. This is what I'm asking everyone to start to think about. Who and what in your path has always been there with you? Not necessarily the name of it, because the name is just a label, but pull the label off of it. Whether it's Jesus, whether it's Buddha, whether it's a team or a group of Lyran or Pleiadians, pull the labels off of all of these amazing energies that you're in tune with, and start to realize that we are all this oneness. We have always been a part of this. This isn't something that's just happening. We're not being invaded by people, things. We're not being, dictated to. It's a free will movement within our hearts to accept who we are or to not accept who we are. And so this week, as I listen to other people that I admire or have listened to for 20 years, which resonate with me, I realize that the words that are coming through right now are words like divine union within. What does that mean for you? Reflect on that. Think about yourself. Where is your divine union within you? Discovery of inner self. What does that mean? What is this inner self we talk about? Who is that inner self? Is that inner self something different than this physical 3D body and mind that I have? Or is this the outsider? Will the real divine self, the divine union within, reveal itself to me? We call it waking up. We call it ascension. We have a lot of names for this. Again, I tell people to pull the labels off and look at the energy. What is the energy of this? What does it feel like? How, if I tap into this energy, do things seem to automatically work out, or I don't feel attached to, or I don't get upset as much anymore, or I feel it, but I don't have to own it. I don't have to become the misery. I don't have to become the pain. I don't have to wear this as a cloak to say to the world, this is who I am. Because we're much more than that. We're the essence behind all of that. We're behind the mirrors. We are the source energy. Brianna says, I think being aware that we are eternal beings is why I find living in this dimension difficult. Thank you for that, Brianna. It is, the word difficult is a word, again, that we place on things where we find struggle, where we find that pull of energy between what we have been told we are and what we have been taught we are since we were born here, and who we truly are. And it's a very good point to look at, and I thank you for that, because it allows us to see that there are two, it's a polarity, it's a duality. This is dimension of polarity and duality, the third dimension. And so do they exist? This is the divine union. Can we bring those two opposing forces together and become the line between yin and yang? Can we become the balancing point of that and know that in any moment we can choose to be difficult, or we can choose to be eternal? This is a choice. And it's only a choice from our eternal presence, from our human stuck in the illusion presence. We can't muster enough energy to set ourselves free from that. That energy comes from within our hearts. It doesn't come from around the outside. You could have a nuclear bomb in your hand, and that's not going to change who you are. It's going to change everything else around you. And this is part of our problem, is for thousands of years, we have changed everything around us. As I went for a walk this morning along the river, and Grandfather Oak, who is a dead tree, spoke to me and said, this is what humanity has done. They have changed everything, including the courses of rivers. But did it have any real effect? The river is still the river. The water is still the water. The trees still grow. Can we annihilate ourselves? Can we annihilate all living forms? And I'm going to say the answer is no. And the reason I say that is because we can cause great damage. We can cause great havoc, not only to what else is around us, but it's what we're doing to ourselves. We will destroy ourselves before we will destroy the energy that is around us, because we're choosing to separate ourselves from it. So I don't want to go to lecture about that, but it's really separation and coming back into that, discovering who that inner self is and what it is really part of the reflection and introspection that I think we're being asked to look at during this period of the number 9. So what are we looking for? Sovereignty within. Who are we? Who are we as sovereign beings? Who are we as sovereign beings who can be born here on this planet, be housed in these physical vehicles, have a control system called the mind, which can create and direct and manipulate all kinds of things, do magic, wonderful, powerful things, and also can be this destructive force. This isn't who we are. This is who we are. Each of us are now descending. Everybody says they're ascending. I say we're descending. I'm always going to be the contrary. This is who I am. This is part of what I came back to do, is pull the labels off of everything, to look at things from a new perspective. And that's all I can share with others, that in 27 years of doing that, I can't logically explain things to you, and I have a memory issue, but the memory issue was in an intentional agreement. It was an intentional agreement for me not to have that memory when I came back, because that memory, this brain, was so powerful that it would continue to manipulate the information it received. And if I did that, then my purpose of being here would no longer be of value to the greater whole to which I am a part of. So again, there's some surrender, there's some submission, but I had a quote that I brought through as Riverman the other day, and all of these things are just tapping into this field of amazing, amazing beings, not as we see beings, not as we know beings, but beings of energy, energy beings. And being welcomed home, being welcomed back, because they never left us. They never abandoned us. We just got lost. We're the lost children of the sun. It's amazing when you start to realize this eternalness that we actually are. Brings up love within ourselves, miracles, stepping away from the old. All of this brings us to our physicality. Our physicality is under duress right now because of all of this. Yet, in the meantime, we have the power, and Naveen has said, it feels like a deeply, deeply powerful breath. We have the power to breathe. Breathe new life into ourselves as these divine, eternal beings. And it's not to make ourselves greater than anybody. It's not to be a savior of what we call the world, but just to activate the true magnificence of who and what we really are, and to begin to understand that while we're still embodying these physical vehicles. The physical vehicles, as we all know, I'm trying to look at the time, I got only 3 minutes, is wearing down. It's tired. We're taking a beating. The physical, that's why our DNA is shifting. We're being supported. We're opening. The more we open ourselves in our heart, the more our DNA will be activated. The more we stay here, the less activation we'll receive. This is part of the connection. This is part of the magic. This is part of the divine process of empowering us to choose the reality of who we are versus the illusion of who we are. And in that process, we become less dense. We become more energetically active and proactive in the world. We can join at the heart level with each other, not for any altruistic or charitable purpose, but just because was the original blueprint of who we are. And we start to bring that into and enliven this whole dimension with that. And in that space, we become the multidimensional beings we are. So we operate on 3D, 4D, 5D, 6D, 7D, whatever dimension you want to experience, because you're open to receive the energy. Is that what unity consciousness is? Is unity consciousness just one consciousness? Or is unity consciousness really a unified field of many consciousness? Many collective consciousnesses who, when we engage with them, appear as one consciousness. And so humanity is many consciousnesses. But to others, we appear as one collective consciousness. And this is what I think my reflection and thought has been about this week. And it's been deep, and I'm sure it's going to continue. And I know for many of you who are thinking and trying to make sense of what I say, what others say, my voice comes to a passage here that I want to read. It's called The Celestial Self. And I'm just going to read this in closing and ask that you just sip this like a fine wine. Most people think that the personality they know on this physical plane is all of them. But remember that only a very small part of you is imprisoned in physical life. I don't like the word imprisoned, but this is how it was written 40 years ago. The body is, what is manifesting through the body is only the point of the triangle. 3, 3, 3, the divine number 9. It's the point of the triangle. That small part of the whole self which comes to earth as a messenger, a seeker, to gather experience in flesh to make way for the God consciousness or the unity consciousness to manifest through every narrow channel which you call your personality. But God or divine creator, however you want to place that, has given you the power to realize and contact that higher self. Come now into the infinite and eternal garden of the Spirit. Gaze upon the still clear water of the pool reflecting the sky, the heavens. On the surface of the pool floats a pure white lily, symbol of your own spiritual nature. See, lying in the golden heart of the lily, the sparkling jewel. This is the divine life, the Christ energy in you, and the sun shining upon it causes it to radiate all the colors of the rainbow. By your aspiration, there grows from that lily the perfect form of the Master Soul, the Master Spirit, visualized by your soul as the Christos. Can you feel the beauty of that radiant being who is all love? And you are in that love forever and ever and ever. Through all eternity, you, the seed of that which we call God, are in God's heart. What have you to fear? Nothing can hurt you, for you are in God. Rest in your innermost heart in God. Thank you all for showing up and being here and listening to my messages and my energy, and may that energy encourage you to deepen your relationship with that eternal part of you, your soul, the soul as source of unconditional love. We call it many names, but in truth, it is really us. We have never truly separated because it's impossible. We can only imagine and create situations in which we are separate. And it's time now to let those go, to see that there is no longer any value in those moments of separation, and come back to who we truly are and learn to express it in the most simple ways. We don't have to be extravagant. Just keep it simple. I thank you. I love you. I respect you. And may your week be one of reflection and introspection, and give you a keener sense of who you truly are as you go about your daily lives. Thank you, and blessings. And I apologize I didn't get to talk to many people today, but then I get carried away in my own whatever's coming through from my multidimensional self, and I'll have to listen to the show to hear what I had to say. Bless you. I love you. Have a great week. See you next week. Bye-bye.